I work for the Jewish Federation of Greater Seattle. We're an 80-year-old organization that is a Jewish charity. We raise over $6 million a year that we then distribute to the community here, locally, in Israel, and worldwide to help Jews in need. On Friday, July 28th, 2006, about 10 of us were left in the office working about 4 in the afternoon. And I heard a loud male voice, angry voice out in the lobby. And I stood up in my office because I thought that Layla, our receptionist, might need some help, but maybe it was an angry donor or someone who had come in off the street. And by the time I got to my door and looked down the hall, Layla was kind of sliding against the wall and coming towards me. And she kind of whispered, "Cheryl, there's a man with a gun out here. He's really angry." And by the time I opened my mouth to say, let me go take care of it, he had followed her around the door and down into the hallway and was standing there waving a gun in our face. He was yelling that he was a Muslim American and he was angry at the Jews and wanted to talk to the media. And I yelled out, "Call 911," as loud as I could. And I said it to Carol, who was right across the hallway from me working in her cubicle. And he turned immediately and shot Carol in the knee. And then he just kept shooting. I lost track of who and when. It was very loud. Couldn't hear anything because of the ringing in my ears from the gunshots. And I felt like somebody had hit me in the side. And I didn't fall down, but I turned to him and I remember asking him, "Why are you doing this?" Not having really processed what he'd said before. And he said again, "I'm an angry Muslim American and I hate you Jews." And at that point he raised the gun to my face and was pointing at me. And so I hit the floor inside the doorway of my office and was wrapping my arms over my head thinking, this is it. He's going to shoot me. Obviously, not fully there. He was very angry, shaky. So I was just waiting. With my head pressed, my face pressed into the floor of the office. Well, nothing happened and nothing happened, and then I heard his voice getting fainter, and I realized he was going down the hallway, and then I started hearing moans, and realized that Layla was in my office too and had been hit, and was obviously in a lot of pain. And I thought for a couple more seconds, and I realized that my niece was supposed to have come to the building at any time. And I thought, oh my gosh, she's coming up to the building. I have to stop her from coming in. And I started to get up to get out. And I felt pain, so I reached underneath me and pulled my hand out. And there was some pink on my hand. And I thought, oh, I guess I have been shot. Didn't realize how badly. Layla was moaning loudly, saying she couldn't feel her legs. And all I could think of was, Kelsey's out there. She could walk into this, with this man shooting off in all directions. And, I could tell that he wasn't right outside the hallway. So I stood up and stuck my head outside, and I couldn't see him. So I immediately just turned and ran out past the lobby, started going down the stairs, and that's when I found Pam's body on the landing, obviously dead. And just knew I had to keep going because I had to get to my niece. So I climbed over her body, and by the time I got to the bottom of the stairs, I realized that the police were there and that the street had been closed off. I could hear sirens outside, but there were no people and no cars on what a quite busy street here in downtown Seattle. And so I went out knowing that I needed to make sure they didn't think I was the shooter leaving the door. So I had one hand holding my side, and I had my other hand up in the air. And I opened the door very slowly and stepped out. And before they could stop me or engage me in conversation, I just turned in the direction that I thought my niece would be coming from, and I didn't see her. So at that point, I turned to the police, and they were down in the corner. It was like a SWAT unit, 3 or 4 officers on the corner, all with machine guns pointed in my direction. And they said, "Run as fast as you can." And I said, "I've been shot. He's still upstairs." And they said, "Run." So I ran all the way down to the corner. And one of the officers said, "You're still in the line of fire. You have to keep running." And I said, "I don't think I can." And he goes, "Yes, you can." And I said, "Okay, yes, I can." And he ran me up to 2nd and Lenora, where The rest of the people who had been in our office who got out the back door had gone up to that corner where there's a Starbucks. And it turned out the reason we had such quick response from the police was there were some police officers in Starbucks on break. And when our coworkers got there, they said there's shooting in our building. And so it helped. From what I've heard, and we haven't all sat down together and compared stories, but what I've been able to piece together is that, you know, he started shooting where I was, and then he went down the hall, and Pam worked right next to me, so he shot Carol, Layla, me, and Pam, and then he went further down the hall and shot Dana, who brought her hand up in front of her. She was pregnant at the time. Brought her arm up in front, and so he hit her in the arm. And then he kept going through the office, and he shot Christina from our accounting department. And then he was going through the office looking for other people. One woman, Tammy, who works in the back of the building, had heard the shots, knew something was really wrong, and she had closed and locked her door. And when she heard him coming through the hall and he was rattling doorknobs, and she knew that if she didn't get out of her office, you know, she might be dead. And so she has one of the few windows in our office that opens into a back alleyway, and she crawled out through that small window and jumped out. Her hair, very long hair, caught on the window catch and tore out of her head. And then she landed on top of a dumpster and got quite cut up, but she was able to get out of the building, you know, without getting shot. He then, from what I can tell, went back around, found Pam trying to leave, shot her again, and she fell on the landing. And then he went to my office door, shot Layla again for the second time, and then he went back and found Dana on the phone with 911, at which point he held her hostage until she convinced him to get on the phone and talk to the 911 operators. And then the 911 operators talked him down and got him to surrender. It turned out, I didn't know it at the time, but it turned out that he had held my niece at gunpoint when she was coming to the building. So when I was trying to get out to find her and stop her, she was already in the building. He had held her at gunpoint all the way up the stairway, and then when he stopped at the reception desk and started talking with Layla, my niece kept walking, you know, a very smart girl, kept walking down the hallway and then got into the ladies' room and locked herself in the stall. Well, I was in the hospital for July 28th through September 6th. And I was on so many sedatives and painkillers, even after I got home. And I was home then for 6 weeks with full-time care. My mom stayed with me. There's a lot of numbing that goes along with post-traumatic stress disorder. Your emotions get numbed, so they're squeezed into a smaller range. I wasn't laughing and I wasn't crying. I was just numbed from both directions. You know, immediately started counseling as soon as I was home for post-traumatic stress, and that really helped a lot. So, you know, it gradually, your emotions come back. I don't think it was till I started back to work part-time in November, I was working 4 hours a week at that point, that I cried for the first time. It was on my first day back at work. We weren't yet back in this building, but I was encountering coworkers, and somebody mentioned Naveed Haq's name to me, and that was the first time it really hit me, emotionally, what had happened to me. So that was a short work day. Well, both in this case and in the Virginia Tech incident, the shooters had some history of mental illness or not being entirely stable. In the case of Naveed Haq, who shot me and my coworkers, it turned out he had, we've heard, a 10-year history of having been treated, and you know, I'm not a doctor, I can't say what he was affected by, but it was, you know, serious enough that I believe if somebody is that ill, they can be a threat to themselves and others, they should be on a list of people who should not have access to guns. It just seems common sense to me that if somebody who is known to have domestic violence, they can't get guns, why can somebody who could potentially lose control of their emotions go and legally buy a gun? And, you know, it just seems common sense.
An easy solution would be nice. Short of that, there are ways that you can reduce the likelihood of gun violence in your own life. First of all, know that you have the right to own a gun. But if you have a gun in the house, there's a 5 times greater chance that any suicide will be lethal. There's a 22 times greater chance that that gun will be used on a friend or family member than an intruder. If you have children in the house and they want to go over to the neighbor's house to play, ask them if there's a gun in the house. If there is, make sure that that gun is securely stored and unloaded. Almost every month in this state, a child is accidentally killed by playing with a gun, a loaded gun. So don't feel bad about asking. Remember, ASK, A-S-K, stands for Asking Saves Kids.